Hello and welcome back. This video is going over all the books that I read in September. I read 8 books, actually read them instead of listened to them. One was an ebook and the rest were, I only have 2 physical copies that I own of the books that I read, and the rest were library books. So I read All Quiet on the Western Front, which was a phenomenal book and I want to own it. I actually want to go back and annotate it and read it every 3 or 4 years is kind of my plan. It was an incredible book. It's a classic, and if you haven't read it before, you really should. It's an easy read, very emotional in some ways. It's the only book that so far this year made me cry. It's really good. I can't say enough about it. The next book was The God of the Woods, which was super awesome. I really loved the character development in this book. It kind of took the book a while to figure out what it was gonna do. I don't know, like when I was reading it, I was like, okay, I don't mind hearing about all these characters. There were quite a few. I would say 12 to 16 character develop that you were really like involved with and were hearing their side of a story. And it took about a little bit more than half the book for me to realize what this book was about, but the stories in each of the character developments were enough to keep my attention. It was very well written with an unexpected ending, of course. I don't know if I would really say it's a thriller because it wasn't like suspenseful, but it was like more like a mystery. It was Stay With Me, and that's by Becky Wade. And I also read Let It Be Me, also by Becky Wade. That's book 1 and 2 of a trilogy of the Misty River saga. Misty River romance. So the Christian romances, a good Christian thread is in there instead of just a mention of God. It's actually like, you know, these characters are struggling like in real life. It's not just like the fluffy, everyone's perfect kind of Christian romance. Our main character in the first book is struggling with opioids. That's something you figure out in the first chapter or 2, so it's not a spoiler. But I mean, it's like dealing with real life issues, and I really appreciated that. There's a fly in here. It's like in the country, folks. That's where I live. Me is about another character that you follow, that you kind of hear mentioned in the first book. So there's 3 books, but there's also 2 other books in the Misty River, but they're not officially like part of the set. I don't know. I want to read those as well. But the important thing to know is that this is like real characters. The first one goes through like kind of like a mystery, and so the second one, but not quite as mysterious as the first. You realize that a lot of the characters in this series were part of a traumatic childhood event, and so it's kind of following the characters that were part of that event. The Women by Kristen Hanna, and I loved it. It was such a good book. It's a historical fiction with a romance as well. It was so good. It was real and raw, and you actually learn a lot. The setting is the Vietnam War. And so our main character is Frankie, and she ends up being a nurse in the Vietnam War. And it really follows like her psychological path during and after the war, and it's very real and raw, and I loved it. And it also like is like a redemptive love story. Library books. And then I had 2 books that I have and I own. The first is Virgin River by Robin Carr, and if you watched my haul video from my new and used book haul, I was so excited to read this because I love the series, but I actually did not like this book. It's very spicy, way more explicit than I would have ever chosen to read, and I was hoping I would just love it, and so I kind of skipped past those parts. But the other thing is that the story and the characters in, the story and characters in the show are not quite the same in the book. There's a lot of things that I liked in the show that weren't present here. First of all, I did not like Jack in this book. I love him in the show. He's a very good man with like good standing character. In the book, I do not feel that's true. He's very much like a won't take no for an answer guy and is very pushy, like intimately with the character, and I just hated it. I really, really did. It kind of ruined the entire series. There's like 20 books in the series, and I won't read it anymore because it ruined what I thought it was gonna be because I watched the show, and the show is not like that. So that was disappointing. I think I would give this 2 stars. That I own is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and I loved this book. It's actually a young adult book. It's a mystery, and it's like a murder mystery, obviously. It's in the name. And so it's really about this character who, very early in the beginning of this book, you understand that she's about to write a report for her senior project on a murder that had happened previously in the town they live in with a student that went to the same high school as her. So she actually goes through, and she doesn't believe the person who was convicted did it. So she's going through, and she actually is like trying to figure out if what was said was true. And I don't want to tell more because I don't want it to spoil it, but it's a part of a trilogy, and because I really liked this book, I already have the second book on hold at the library, so I'm ready to listen. Okay, and then I did some books, some audiobooks. One was Behind Every Good Man, and this is a story set in a political setting where a wife has basically been wronged by her husband, and she is trying to sabotage his political campaign. So it's pretty good. And then the next one was Kilman Creek, and that is actually the second book in a 5-book series, which I didn't realize because it was just for free. So I listened to it, and I don't feel like I missed anything like big from the first book. However, I got the first book from the library, and I just don't want to read it because I started to read it and I feel like I already know what's going to happen. So I would definitely like read them in order. And it's by Rachel Kane. The first book is called Stillhouse Lake. And I'm sure next one is The Villa. This was like kind of forgettable to me. I don't really remember all that it was about. I was like working and traveling while I was listening to it. So as I'm Glad My Mom Died. And this book is, I would say there's a lot of trigger warnings. There is language, and it can be a little bit graphic. I wouldn't say it's spicy because it's not like in a endearing way. But it's actually the story of the real life co-star for iCarly. So if you know that Disney show iCarly, it's her best friend in the show. That in real life, this is her biography that she wrote, and she's an author now. It's very interesting. It goes through like childhood, like the pros and cons of childhood stardom, and kind of like mostly like how like her mother was like not a good influence on her life. It's actually really heartbreaking to like hear it, but I feel like maybe she's come and turned a corner in her life after her mom died, and she was able to kind of like admit some things to herself and heal from that. Listened to was The Inmate by Frida McFadden. It was great. I love Frida McFadden books. They're fast-paced thrillers, and there's always a twist, and there's I've read there's a 4th book of hers I read. You're never gonna guess the end. So that's what's cool about her. She's very good at twists and plot twists and you know, story building. So she's good at that. Do Keep It in the Family. That was another one that was just free on Amazon, and the story was gripping. It was kind of horrifying also. It kind of starts where a couple, they move into like the husband's grandparents' house that went for sale or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And they find dead babies. And so in the attic or something like that. So it's horrifying. The thought is, but it doesn't really go through details of that particular thing happening. But it goes through like her having like a mental breakdown and just like not being able to like let this go, and she has to figure out what happened to these babies. And so she's basically trying to solve the murders of these babies. Have some disturbing undertones. Was Freeing Teresa. This actually I listened to through, I can't remember what it's called. Okay, I had to move because my son is home. So the name of the place where I was listening to that book is called NetGalley, which is like, my dogs, is a kind of like an ARC source. So you can get ebooks and audiobooks on NetGalley. So that's where I got Freeing Teresa. It was super good. It's a true story, and it's about her experience with her adult handicapped sister and her elderly father, and what the family drama was basically when he was getting too old to take care of her, and she has Down syndrome, and it's like basically she had to become the activist for her sister, and it's a super cool story. Most of the time I was very angry listening to it because it's so maddening and so frustrating, but the end is really good and I really enjoyed it. And there was one ebook that I read, and it's from Courtney Walsh, called Can't Help Falling, and the trope is like old friends to lovers, and it's really a cute meet. It's a nice meet cute, and it's like, it's very endearing. I really liked it. She's a Christian romance author, and it was my first book that I ever read of hers, and I loved it a lot. So I'm like on the hunt for her books in the Christian romance section. So yeah, Courtney Walsh, really good. Okay, this is a piece together video. So thank you for watching. That was 15 books in September. I hope you liked it, and don't forget to like my videos, subscribe to my channel, and give me a thumbs up. I'll see you in the next one.